Okay, if everybody is together, we're going to slowly start. Dear friends, today we are here to launch the World Campaign Freedom for Öcalan. The time has come in Brussels. We are doing this in the heart of Europe because any progress today in Turkey does not only require the continuous struggle for democracy in Turkey itself, it also requires some impulse from the outside. Abdullah Öcalan has been abducted from Kenya in 1999. Next year, in 2019, will be the 20th year of his abduction and subsequent imprisonment, and also his 70th birthday. Öcalan has spent all these years in isolation, and since 2011, his lawyers have not been allowed to visit him. April 5th, 2015 is the last day that the committee, which has been visiting him once a week for 2 years during the so-called peace process, saw him. Finally, since September 13th, 2016, when his brother last talked to him, no one has heard from him. Abdullah Öcalan was given the death penalty by the Imrali showcase trial in 1999. Later, in its place, a so-called aggravated life sentence term was introduced only for Öcalan. And now, hundreds of people are too subjected to it. This life sentence without the possibility of parole is a form of punishment that has been condemned by many international organizations because it is in effect a form of capital punishment itself. Abdullah Öcalan's isolation, the ban enforced on his visitors, family, and lawyers, and his life sentence without parole are extremely severe human rights violations, and they have to come to an end. But these are not only violations against an individual, but also violations against the people who see him as their leader. Indeed, the severe conditions forced upon Öcalan also reflect Turkey's treatment of Kurds and Kurdish representatives in general. The equation is very, very simple. When the isolation and the repression against Öcalan is stepped up, the Turkish state is waging war against the Kurds. When Öcalan's conditions are improved, there is an immediate relaxation and the scale tipped to the side of peace. When Öcalan was not accessible between 2011 and 2013, thousands of Kurdish politicians were imprisoned. Between 2013 and 2015, however, when regular visits to Öcalan by a committee were possible, he initiated a serious peace process in Turkey between the state and the PKK's guerrilla forces. Since 2015, and since the visits to Öcalan have stopped, dozens of Kurdish political representatives and mayors, among them the co-presidents of People's Democracy Party, HDP, have been jailed. According to UN reports, over 500 Kurdish civilians have been killed, and numerous cases of police violence and torture have been recorded. The Turkish state has attacked and occupied the Kurdish region of Afrin in Syria, as well as South Kurdistan in Iraq, and according to Amnesty International reports, forcibly evacuated villages and tortured, killed, and forcibly disappeared many inhabitants. When we are saying freedom for Öcalan, the time has come, we also believe that the time for peace has come in Turkey and in the Middle East. Any improvement in Öcalan's conditions would also mean an improvement in the situation of Kurds in Turkey and open up the possibility of peacemaking. Turkey's main problem today is not its economy. It is also not religion or certain individuals. Turkey's main problem is the lack of peace and democracy. A state that is at war with the Kurds at home and abroad can be neither peaceful nor democratic nor stable. Democracy is the key to peace, and a peaceful resolution of the Kurdish question is the key to democracy. Abdullah Öcalan is the key person for that peace and that democracy. There is no need to argue for this anymore. This is now very well seen and known. The question is rather, who really wants peace and democracy? Whoever is in favor of peace and democracy in Turkey should rally behind our slogan, Freedom for Öcalan. The time has come. Therefore, we say, the time has come for Öcalan's freedom and the freedom for Kurds. He is one of the most important leaders of Kurds in Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. In Syria, Kurds are already building a world according to his ideals. It is therefore not only for Kurds in Turkey, but also for the Kurds everywhere, that his freedom and the lifting of his isolation matters. The campaign we are launching here today has been on the way for the last couple of years, and we have collected 10 million signatures worldwide demanding Öcalan's freedom. This is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, freedom campaign after Nelson Mandela. These signatures have been given not for the obvious reason that the rights of Öcalan as an individual are being violated severely. These signatures have been given because people also know that without Öcalan's strategic leadership, there can be no peace in Turkey. Let's remember the fact that in South Africa and in Northern Ireland, as well as in Basque, it was only after people's leaders, such as Mandela, became free, they could lead their people to peace and reconciliation. So people that are demanding Öcalan's freedom are also campaigning for the establishment of peace in the Middle East. We call on everybody today to join us in our demand for freedom for Öcalan and peace in Kurdistan. The time for this has come. Today, the support of the campaign to free Öcalan grows in many ways. In addition to those who supported the campaign over the years, we now have the unions from the UK, including the Durham miners, who are represented here today by Joseph Whitworth. I welcome you here. Thank you for being here. As well as MST, the landless workers' movement in Brazil, or Mothers of the Plaza de Mayo, Nora Cortinas representing them, as well as an impressive number of additional organizations and individuals from Italy, including the very many municipalities that have given Öcalan honorary citizenship. And today we have Eleonora De Maio, who is representing Mayor of Napoli, delegated by him to be here. As well as, of course, we have many different movements around the world, like the Sinn Féin, but also the Arnaldo Otegi, who's representing here the coalition of Yüksel Herria Bildu. So we are very, very pleased that Arnaldo was able to make it to here as well. The campaign, and there are other, of course, intellectuals over the years who have given their support and have publicly demanded Abdullah Öcalan's freedom. So the campaign will continue throughout this year and next year, culminating itself around many different events, actions, protests, celebrations throughout the years, saying that the high time is now. This is the now, before the status quo in the Middle East and anywhere else in the world is built. There is a need to make sure that the Kurdish people and the people in the region are able to have a say in terms of what their future will look like. Therefore, your support of freedom for Öcalan will mean freedom for different ethnicities in the Middle East and in Turkey, freedom for democracy, freedom for free speech, and peace and democracy in Turkey and the Middle East. I thank you very much, and now I will invite for the interventions from all the honorable guests that we have today, who represent the different areas of solidarity and support around the world for Kurds and for freedom for Öcalan. Thank you, and now I pass it on to Arnaldo Otegi. Thank you very much, Arnaldo, for being here.
Egun guztioi, lehenik eta behin euskaraz zengo dut minutu bat baldin bada ere esateko niretzat ohore badela gaur hemen egotea, eta beraz, gonbidatua izan naizenez gero nire eskerrona eman nahi diot, gonbidapena egin diatenei ez bakarrik nire izenean, baizik eta baita ere Euskal Herriko ezker movimendu independentistaren izenean.
I will try to translate his words. He says that it's an honor to be here. Are you here? Yeah. He says that he has started thanking the organizers to welcome him here, to invite him here, not only in his own name, but in the name of all the Basque for Independence movement.
Mi nombre es Arnaldo Otegi, soy, como se ha dicho, el coordinador general de una coalición de izquierdas e independentista vasca que se llama Euskal Herria Bildu, y hoy me encuentro aquí para mostrar mi apoyo personal y político en mi nombre y en el nombre del conjunto del movimiento vasco de izquierdas e independentista con el compañero y amigo Abdullah Öcalan.
My name is Arnaldo Otegi. I'm the leader of the Basque Pro-Independence Movement coalition, Euskal Herria Bildu. I'm here today to show my support and the support of all the men and women of the pro-independence movement, Basque Pro-Independence Movement, to Abdullah Öcalan.
Y quiero aprovechar además esta oportunidad para renovar aquí, delante de todos y todas, nuestro compromiso con su liberación, así como con los derechos del pueblo kurdo.
And I want to show again our compromise with his release and all the Kurdish people.
Venimos hoy a Bruselas a denunciar la represión que vive el pueblo kurdo y la situación de nuestro compañero Abdullah Öcalan. Yo mismo he pasado más de 14 años de mi vida en prisión por liderar una opción de izquierdas independentista en mi país. Por lo tanto, hablo tanto en términos políticos como en términos personales, porque conozco bien cuál es la experiencia de la cárcel, y por eso para mí es una obligación política, moral y personal estar del lado de los presos políticos en cualquier lugar del planeta, y en este caso de Abdullah Öcalan.
We are coming today to Brussels to denounce the repression who suffered the Kurdish people and the situation of our colleague Abdullah Öcalan. Myself, I have spent more than 14 years of my life in prison because I have been working for the independence of my country, of the Basque country. For my own experience, I would like to show again my full support to Abdullah Öcalan, and I think that is a moral duty to do that.
Sé perfectamente bien qué es el aislamiento en una cárcel, y por lo tanto sabemos bien el aislamiento al que están sometiendo al compañero Öcalan, y creemos que no es solo un castigo que se hace en términos personales contra él, sino es una manera de atacar al conjunto del pueblo kurdo. Es una manera de intentar callar su voz, es una manera de intentar doblegarlo. Evidentemente lo vemos también como una muestra del nivel de represión que Turquía está ejerciendo en este momento contra el pueblo kurdo, contra su propio pueblo también, diría yo, para callar y aplastar un conflicto que es de todo punto de vista político y que exige un reconocimiento y una solución de carácter político.
I know very well what does the isolation that Abdullah Öcalan suffers now is not only against him, it's also against the Kurdish people, and it's an attempt to stop his voice, to silence his voice. Of course, it's also with this Turkey is showing its level of repression against the Kurdish people, and the goal of this repression is to silence a conflict which is political and which needs, of course, a political and democratic solution.
En este sentido, queremos renovar nuestro llamamiento a favor de la negociación y el acuerdo, y exigimos y reclamamos una vez más a la comunidad internacional a que se implique y promueva una resolución justa, acordada y democrática a la cuestión nacional que plantea el pueblo kurdo. Como saben, la campaña internacional a favor de la libertad de Öcalan, de la cual formo parte, junto con otras personalidades de talla internacional como Noam Chomsky, José Ramos Horta, Jerry Adams, Desmond Tutu, Angela Davis, ha recogido ya más de 10 millones de firmas. Es tiempo ahora de redoblar nuestros esfuerzos para presionar al Estado turco para que respete los derechos individuales y también los colectivos del pueblo kurdo. En nombre de todos ellos y de todas ellas, insto desde aquí a que se redoblen estos esfuerzos para presionar a este Estado para que respete los derechos individuales y colectivos del pueblo kurdo.
In that sense, we would like to show again, or to call again in favor of the negotiation and agreement, and I think that it's time for the international community to involve and promote a resolution for the Kurdish issue. As you know, the international campaign in favor of Öcalan, which I'm taking part also with some very known international persons like Noam Chomsky, José Ramos Horta, Jerry Adams, Desmond Tutu, or Angela Davis, and as Habib has said, has already collected more than 10 millions of signatures. It's time now to put more pressure to the Turkish state to respect the individual and collective rights of the Kurdish people. On behalf of all of them, I would like to ask here and now to renew the work to put more pressure to the Turkish state in order to respect the individual and collective rights of the Kurdish people.
En este camino, para nosotros y nosotras, la liberación de Abdullah Öcalan, un líder que cuenta con la confianza de su pueblo, sería esencial. Contribuiría no solo a la distensión en el Kurdistán, poniendo las bases reales para situar el conflicto en una vía de solución real, acordada y democrática, sino que ayudaría de forma importante también a la estabilidad del conjunto de la región. Una región en la que Turquía, por supuesto, pero también Siria, Irak o Irán, territorios dos de estos países que han sido invadidos por el ejército turco para reprimir.
In that way, the freedom of Abdullah Öcalan is absolutely key, not only because it will help to the situation in Kurdistan, putting the basis to put the conflict in a resolution way, but also because it will be absolutely key for the stability of all the region, from Turkey, of course, to Syria, Iraq, and Iraq. And we have to remember that the army of Turkey has entered in territories of Syria and Iraq.
Abdullah Öcalan no es solo un ejemplo para el pueblo kurdo, es un compañero y un amigo que sirve de inspiración para todas las personas que trabajamos por un mundo diferente. Por ello, su liberación no es solo importante para el propio pueblo kurdo, que lo es, sino que es también esencial para todos los que queremos trabajar por un mundo diferente.
Abdullah Öcalan is not only a model for the Kurdish people, he's a comrade and friend, and he's an inspiration for all the people who are working for a better world. In that sense, his freedom is not only important for the Kurdish people, it's also very important for all the people who are working for a better world.
Yo mismo, cuando estuve en prisión, conté con la solidaridad de muchas personas que pusieron en su día en marcha la campaña Free Otegi a favor de mi liberación, entre ellas muchas personas que también habían conocido la cárcel y la represión, como Leila Zana, como Jerry Adams o Angela Davis. Hoy queremos hacer llegar a la comunidad internacional, a Abdullah Öcalan y a todo el pueblo kurdo nuestro firme compromiso de seguir trabajando para conseguir su libertad y la paz, y un futuro justo y mejor para el Kurdistán y para todos los pueblos del mundo. Yasker y Free Öcalan.
When I was in jail, in prison, the international campaign Free Otegi counted with many people. Some of them people who has been in jail also, who has suffered repression, as Leila Sana, Jerry Adams, or Angela Davis. Today, here in Brussels, we would like to call to the international community to, of course, to send a message to Abdullah Öcalan and to all the Kurdish people to show our compromise, our commitment to follow working until get the freedom of Öcalan and the peace, a better future for Kurdistan, and he has finished his work saying Free Öcalan.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that intervention. And now I invite Joseph Whitworth. Joseph, I invite you now for your speech. Thank you.
Good morning and greetings from the Durham miners of the former Durham coalfield. Many of you might be wondering why we're here. Indeed, with the closure of the last coal mine in County Durham, once the biggest coalfield in the world, in 1994, we are still a voice to be considered. The answer is that we've survived one of the greatest attacks on a working class community ever to be inflicted. Our coal mines are gone, but our heritage and culture stands firm. They may have taken our livelihoods, but they have not taken our pride. The Durham Miners Association once represented 200,000 coal miners. We now have 2,000 surviving members. But we organised the biggest celebration of trade union and working class history on the planet. This is called the Durham Miners Gala. You don't read much about it in the British media, but it is bigger than the Glastonbury Festival. It happens on the second Saturday in July almost every year since 1871, and is a magnificent parade of banners, brass bands and other trade union contributors. All the leading trade union, Labour MPs, trade unionists attend and what we call the big meeting. This year we were joined by over 200,000 people. It's phenomenal. The reason I've taken some time to set the scene for us being here is that this year we were proud to host the Freedom for Öcalan campaign as the international theme for the gala. We met Ibrahim Douglas in February of this year and he outlined the campaign for us. It didn't take us more than 5 minutes to understand that the campaign is possibly one of the most important struggles for trade union rights, human rights and the future of democracy. Other speakers will cover the detail and have covered the detail of the campaign. The Durham Miners Association has a long history of supporting oppressed peoples and its individuals. The Öcalan campaign reminds us of the brutal injustices of the apartheid era in South Africa. To us, Abdullah Öcalan is the Nelson Mandela of Europe. We fought alongside many others in the 70s and 80s to seek an end to apartheid. We maintained close links with the African National Congress throughout this period. We've raised funds and gave material support to the anti-apartheid movement and the freedom for Nelson Mandela. So now...
No, you.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So now, it's only right that we support the Freedom for Öcalan campaign, and we are not alone. Nearly every British trade union supports this campaign and the broader campaign for Kurdish independence. It's not just a trade union issue either. The campaigns for Kurdish rights has cross-party support. There is a growing awareness that the Kurds must have the right to determine their own future. We can no longer expect the Kurdish forces to bear the brunt of the struggle against ISIS, while other state forces stand back. We can no longer tolerate Erdogan's brutal reprisals in Afrin and elsewhere to continue. We see Öcalan and the Kurdish movement as a bulwark against anti-democratic and fundamentalist forces. These are the reasons for the Freedom of Öcalan campaign, featured so prominently at the Durham Miners Gala. Some people have asked, What does it have to do with us, the Durham miners? Our reply was clear. Everything we hold close to our hearts about democracy, freedom from oppression, and the free will of people is encapsulated in the Öcalan campaign. It is important to the people of County Durham, and it is important to the world. We've been here before. The fascist regimes gaining strength in the heart of the periphery of Europe. The Öcalan campaign stands against this. The Kurdish movement's values stand against this. We stand against this. We should all remember that the attack of the Durham miners from the Thatcher government, she and her colleagues used all the power of the British state to defeat a year-long strike to defend jobs and communities. The consequences of losing that strike are the immersion of our immerseration of our communities. We have still not recovered from that class war. I use the term class war because that's what it was. The rich and powerful wanted to defeat organised labour. They did that under the cloak of democracy and laid waste to vast parts of the UK's coal communities areas. They didn't offer any post-war economic settlements. They just left people to suffer in their defeat. Thatcher called Nelson Mandela a terrorist. He most certainly was not. Erdogan calls Öcalan a terrorist. Again, he is most certainly not. The Durham miners see the parallels between their struggle and that of the oppressed liberation movements. We continue to support the Öcalan campaign until justice is won, until he is released, until the Kurds have the right to govern themselves. Thank you for listening.
Thanks very much, Joe. And now Eleonora De Maio, representing the municipality of Napoli and its mayor.
Thank you, Robin. Let me start by thanking you in the name of Neapolitan Council and the Mayor Luigi De Magistris for this important invite. We are really happy to join this important campaign. I am here as the official representative for the mayor who wouldn't feel his absence at this important gathering. As many of you know, in the last years, our city has expressed solidarity, closeness, and profound admiration for the battle of democracy and freedom fought by the Kurdish people, and at the same time, a great support for President Öcalan, in the last 20 years, who has been detained unjustly in the Turkish jail on Imrali Island under inhuman conditions. For this reason, as I've said before, on February 2016, the Mayor of Naples bestowed the honorary citizenship to the Kurdish leader, giving it directly in the end of his nice dilek. For the same reason, in the summer of that year, we signed, in the presence of the Mayor of Kobane, a pact of friendship between the two cities, Napoli and Kobane. Furthermore, the Neapolitan Council didn't fail to express the violation to human rights which occurred in Bagura and in Rojava within the last month, voting for documents often approved unanimously. These concrete actions aren't solely the belief of Naples, but of many other Italian councils like Palermo, Reggio Emilia, and many others. And they are the proof of how important is the experiment of democratic confederalism and, in general, the feminist, ecologist, democratic doctrine of President Öcalan for the contemporary Europe, because they represent a civil model of cohabitance between people of different religions and culture, even more importantly, in a worrying moment where, like this, there is an ever-rising of neo-fascist groups in Europe and of xenophobic parties. Thus, as an administration close to the Kurdish people, we are extremely worried, above all, about the inhuman detention of President Abdullah Öcalan. Moreover, we are certain that only with his immediate release can there be a significant step towards an effective and long-lasting peace process in the Middle East, which has so far long been torn apart by decades of war, genocide, and terrible human rights violation. A peace process which isn't so difficult to comprehend would have a positive effect also on the geopolitical equilibrium and the stabilization of Europe. It is our interest to work until we realize the roadmap outlined by Öcalan and supported by the Kurdish people at the negotiation tables. We were unilaterally interrupted by Turkey in 2015, when the fascist transformation of the Turkish state and the change of the country governed by Erdogan in an unsafe state where the political and cultural opposition is always repressed. Outlining the detention of Öcalan during the 20 years of his detention is, in our opinion, vital to confront the question of peace and democracy in the Middle East, as was the release of Nelson Mandela, which definitely led to the end of apartheid in South Africa. Consequently, considering the little news that has been received from the European Committee for the Prevention of Torture, CPT, which visited the Imrali Island in 2016, as much later the report was made only partially public because of the veto of Ankara government, we asked to the international community to mobilize until President Öcalan is able to receive visit, above all else to have his checked by a physician and to be able to meet his lawyer and relatives. This fury is unacceptable on a man whom many regard as a key figure of the process of peace in the Middle East. But that's not all. As friend of Kurdish people, and mainly as a strong defenders of the extraordinary experiment of municipalist government, which practices Rojava cantons in spite of the pressure of the Syrian war and the Turkish repression, we invite the international community to open its eyes in respect to the peace process which is now opening in Syria. A process in which Syrian Kurds must be involved, not only because Rojava cantons occupied 27% of what was in Syrian territories before the war, and not only because of the key role that the Kurdish militia has played in the defeat of ISIS, plus the models of radical democracy and integration will be necessary in material and cultural reconstruction of a country destroyed by a long war that has killed hundreds of thousands of people and created millions of refugees. On this point, Europe must demonstrate not to be submissive to some non-European nation, in particular to Turkey, and must push for recognition of Kurdish people at the negotiation tables. At the same time, we believe the time has come for the European institutions to have united and unanimous and determined voices in condemning the degeneration of democracy and the fascist transformation in the Turkish state in recent years. It's unexplainable and unadmissible the silence of communitarian institutions in front of the arrest of many principal representatives in Turkish opposition, also tens of thousands of journalists and cultural figures not accepted by the regime and for this reason put in jail. It is unacceptable too if we consider that Turkey is a privileged interlocutor for the European Union on the theme of migration, as there are 3 million of Syrian refugees within their confines who otherwise would have gone to Europe. These weapons of blackmail based on inhumanity generated an omerta towards the Ankara government which is not compatible in any way with the principles of the European Union is founded on. If Europe wants to regain credibility, they must demonstrate a true independence and break the connection with the Erdogan regime, which are the indirect reason for the perpetuation of the violence in the Turkish and Syrian area. From our part, as representative of Council, friends of Kurdish people, we must be the first to work concretely to construct a network of territories which represent point of reference for democracy and civilization and which demonstrate the existence of a confederation of municipality able to break the silence of national state and Europe on Kurdish question. The Kurdish people in these years have made enormous sacrifice to defend their democratic autonomy, but also to protect the humanity from the danger of jihadism, fighting a war without borders against Daesh and defeating each obstacle one after the other. Kurdish people have demonstrated the ability to exist as a free and supportive multi-ethnic community with different religions, creating a model of civil cohabitation between Arabs, Yazidi, Kurdish, and etc. Kurdish people have also demonstrated to all the women of the world how to build a society not founded on gender roles and on patriarchal prevarication. For this and for many other reasons, the moment has come to break the silence and mobilize for Öcalan freedom and for the right to exist and exist in peace of all the women and men, all the Kurdish women and men. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleonora. Now, actually, we have the former head of CPT, which is the European Committee for the Prevention of Torture. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to come in person, but we nevertheless tried to have him over the Skype. So I wonder, Öcalan, if
he's not ready for the 12:30.
Oh, I see. Okay, in that case, we will continue. What I will do is now open up for questions. If any of you have questions, please ask the the contributors to this discussion. Please. And please introduce yourselves. Please. Microphone. But I think maybe we can hear you. Yeah.
I am Hugo van Rompuy, former member of the Belgian Parliament and the youngest mayor of Belgium. But I am fighting for the Kurds since the chemical bombing in 1988. From that time, I have a lot of contacts with the problem, with the Kurdish problem. 20 years ago, I have interviewed Abdullah Öcalan in the jail in Rome. I have written from 2003 until this year 11 books about the Kurdish question. I have worked on a doctorate at the University of Louvain during 14 years. That's of course the basis of my intervention about the Kurdish problem. In my last book, what is an analysis, historical, anthropological, philosophical, and theological about the Kurdish question. I mentioned the peace program of Abdullah Öcalan coming from the interview of Rome in 14 points. I give in that book also 14 arguments, historical arguments, in order to defend your proposal to start peace, the peace negotiations, and the negotiations in order to get free Abdullah Öcalan. I agree totally your analysis of the essence of the Kurdish question. My only question is not to you, but to the Belgian government, the European government, the American government, and the European Union. When will you stop the treatment of the Kurdish people? It is a criminal and cowardly action. You have to stop it immediately. There are no reasons to put the Kurds on the list of terrorists in Europe. The title of my last book is The Kurds Want Peace via Political Negotiations. So, I thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Please. Can you also introduce yourself to everybody? Thank you.
My name is you always agree that freedom of Öcalan is very important for the peace process in Kurdish questions, which will also contribute, safety, security in Europe. What has been reaction from the European or the Western countries? In this case, those countries who, for example, about 20 years ago they was helping Turkish intelligence service to capture Öcalan. What is the position of these European countries if you believe that Mr. Öcalan is important for the peace process and is going to contribute security, safety also in Europe? So what is their position as of right now? Maybe how do you say some words or and I know was very busy with this case.
Okay. Is there any other questions at the moment? We'll take it all and then go through the responding. If not, then we will take questions again, but I will respond to Rani's question. Now, of course, as you pointed out yourself, that back in 1998, 1999, and Odessa's that started in October 98, ended up in Öcalan's abduction in Kenya by a NATO operation. So it is a very spot-on question, I have to say. And of course, the intervention into the Middle East and in Turkey continues to date. Öcalan himself has called this the Third World War. This is why in my speech too I mentioned that at the moment the status quo after the World War II is no longer there. There is a huge conflict between the national capital and the transnational capital. But the only thing overlapping between the two is their desire to continue exploitation and the oppression, especially through the use of nationalism, sexism, religionism, and of course deepening the economic crises and using of violence against people all over the world. And so therefore when we look at both the Kurdish question in general in the Middle East, we are seeing that there are no longer the conventional borders there. It is indeed these powers who have destroyed these borders. Turkey, contrary to international law, is now in Iraqi Kurdistan, in South Kurdistan. It is now in contrary to these laws, international conventions and laws, have invaded and attacked Afrin. They are in Idlib, and we hear today the beginning of what will happen in Idlib today. But of course there is one underlying factor, that Turkey is deepening the turmoil because it has not been able to resolve the Kurdish question, and it is there to do everything it can so that the new status quo in the Middle East does not tip over for the benefit of not only Kurdish peoples, but of all the oppressed and excluded in the Middle East, in Turkey, and in all the countries that we're talking about. So actually we're not sure really if these states want peace and security. This is why in my speech I have called, and here we represent the grassroots movements who are actually working for this peace and security. The UN had made very recently a statement saying that the 70-year-old human rights accumulation is at danger. And this is why, even if we look at a level of the conditions of Abdullah Öcalan, this is like a black hole in the middle of Europe. This shows us that, in fact, the European human rights organizations or political bodies are not even implementing their own conventions, rules, and decisions. There is no other prison that exists in the middle of Europe under these conditions. So therefore, of course, we see this, the silence of the European states and human rights institutions as an encouragement for Turkey to continue with this policy. This is why today here we also make a call, and several of our friends did make that call, for these states and European human rights institutions to break that silence. To break that silence so that the turmoil and the heavy and brutal human rights violations find a halt in the Middle East. And of course, what is even more important, I have to say, that Kurds and their friends were able to bring both the Kurdish question and their proposal for a solution on their own. You know, in 1999, you remember those days, there was the threat of death penalty, and Öcalan was abducted. The Kurds and their friends were on the streets, in the streets, saying, you can't eclipse our son. And they were able to overturn the imminent threat of massacres and civil war in Turkey against the Kurds, you know. So, and then this continued, you know, they managed to get the death penalty abolished in Turkey. Then there was the Abdullah Öcalan is my political representative, a signature campaign in Turkey that collected 3.5 million signatures, with lots of people being imprisoned for giving their signature. And finally, we talked about it, 10 million signatures before that Enough is Enough campaign. So here what I'm saying is, instead of an expectancy, of course, we call on these institutions to do their bit, but we also call on all these movements and unions and municipalities and all the grassroots movements to embrace the Freedom for Öcalan campaign, to push their states and the bodies for a push of the Turkish state for freedom for Öcalan and freedom for Kurdish people and peace and democracy. So,
thank you, Hamid. But
thank
the
you.
main question is again, if they believe that he will be as symbol, he's a symbol for the peace process. This will help also Europe. Why Europe is not busy with this case? Even the human rights organization are not busy with the case. This is the main question.
I don't know if anybody else wants to say something, but I think the situation of Third World War, and as I said, the fact that, you know, these states do not really want peace and democracy is a very much of a determining factor. I think people, even these states, can see that Öcalan is the key and strategic person for brokering of a peace in Turkey and also in Rojava.
But also, and the Öcalan's affected organization as playing a very big role against the Daesh, which is a very big problem for Europe. So in this case, the against
Yes.
Ireland.
Okay. So I will maybe allow others to also respond, but I will also ask other questions. For other questions. Sorry, there was somebody behind you first.
Soru Türkçe olacak ya da
Çevirebilirim onlara.
evet,
Hı
tamam.
hı.
Ben inisiyatiften de organizasyonda yer alanlar için
Evet.
sizin bundan sonraki eylem takvimini belirlendi mi? Ne görüyorsunuz? Örneğin Temmuz ayında sanırım Durham Maden İşleri Festivali'nde festivali Öcalan'a adanmıştı.
Evet.
Bundan sonra bir etkinlikler olacak mı? Örneğin Bask ülkesinde Öcalan için herhangi bir eylem veya etkinlik mi görülüyor mu? Bununla birlikte şimdiye kadar 10 milyon imza toplandığını söylediniz ve bu kampanya 2 yıl daha devam edecek en az. Hedef olarak belirlenen, yani son 2 yılda 10 milyon toplandı. Bundan sonra hedef olarak ne kadar imza toplanmasını bekliyorsunuz, veriyorsunuz?
Okay, the question was in Turkish, so let me try and translate that for all of us. Firstly, he's wondering what the agenda is from after now, because the Durham Miners Gala was dedicated to Abdullah Öcalan just only recently, a month or so ago, and also, of course, there are many different activities done in Italy by the municipalities and otherwise. There was 10 million signatures, and also in the Basque country. You know, is there anything foreseen as to that? And also he asks, of course, the international initiative, what we will do all together on that front. And whether the 10 million signature campaign will continue. Let me get the other question as well, and then I think we'll get all the questions. Otherwise, we're going to run out of time here. So that's the first question, and then this gentleman. Yes. No, I'm sorry, the other gentleman. He was before you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Musa Abdullah from the Brussels Times in Brussels. I would like to ask two questions. First, about the timing of this campaign to free Öcalan. I mean, of course, never too late. I mean, to start such a campaign, especially as they've been in prison for so many years. But I wonder what makes you think that it's likely that we will succeed, considering, I mean, the situation, political situation in Turkey, its state of emergency, I mean, the victory of President Erdogan in the latest elections, and the suppression of freedom of expression. I suppose it's even illegal, I suppose, in Turkey, even to discuss the rapist issue and on its elites. And with that also linked to all this question, I mean, wouldn't you need the support of the European Union, especially the European Parliament, and also the Council of Europe, to support this campaign? And I wonder if they have that support. And then the second question, we saw also the pictures here from the prison, it said that Erdogan has been isolated for so many years, and haven't heard about him for the latest years and so on. I wonder if he has managed to smuggle out anything from his prison about his opinions, if they somehow has changed since they say was in prison. For example, what does he think today about the use of terror? What does he think today about Kurdish autonomy in Turkey and the Kurdish rights?
Okay, and the gentleman over there.
I'm Michel van Hoornen, coordinator of the Left Ecological Forum. It's not a party, but a movement, political movement, and certainly we will support this campaign. But in order to achieve success, I think it will be interesting to convince all the movements, human rights movements, trade unions, and so on, who have been campaigning for the restoration of democracy in Turkey, to integrate this dimension of the freedom for Öcalan. I think this would increase the chances to obtain a result if you integrate it in a more global struggle for democracy in Turkey.
Thank you.
Je peux poser une question en français?
Yeah. No French.
I can translate.
Okay.
Bonjour. Et en fait, ma question sera sur la Belgique, la politique belge. Est-ce que vous avez déjà commencé à faire des lobbying auprès des partis politiques belges, par exemple, comme le Parti socialiste, comme PTB qui est en train de développer en Wallonie en particulier, et aussi Écolo, par exemple. Est-ce que vous avez déjà des contacts ou vous avez parlé des municipalités? Est-ce que vous avez des municipalités qui vous soutiennent pour votre campagne? Voilà. Merci.
This question is if you have started as a campaign to lobby with Belgian political parties, especially left-wing Belgian political parties, and do you have contacts with Belgian cities and villages in order, same thing as in Naples, which may support the campaign?
Okay, and it was your question?
My name is Maximez. I'm a trade unionist, and I'm very interested in the campaign. I started myself years ago. And I would like to ask Mr. Whitford how it, if you could tell a bit, explain a bit how it came to pass that most of the British trade unions supported officially the campaign, because I heard it myself, one of your colleagues from the Trade Union Unite told the same thing in a conference at the European Parliament in December of last year. And I myself, as a trade unionist, it seems a bit impossible to me on Belgian trade union level to bring about the same thing. It seems a bit like a taboo, and I'm wondering, indeed, to the coordination campaign, if you planned, as we have 3 official representative trade unions in Belgium, do you tend to get in touch with the high responsibles of the trade unions? Since I fully rejoin what Michel said, it seems to me crucial that try to get in touch with the trade unions, with mass movements, in order to bring about real change. Thank you.
Okay.
I thought
I think we're going to wrap it up because we are running out of time here. So I will first give the floor to everybody, and then if there's time left, then we can go ahead. Yeah.
Just 2 seconds to add something to your question. I think that in the European Union and the European nations has like a double morality on this on the Kurdish question, because when we speak about the victory of Raqqa or YPG and YPG, there is like a big voice on the most important channels of the world, etc. But at the same time, when we speak about the Turkish repression in Bakur, when we speak about all the human rights violation in Turkey, there's an incredible silence. And as I say in my speech, I'm sure that the point is the weapon of blackmail of the refugees. That's the point, and that's the reason why the Syrian war must finish, because we have to stop this blackmail.
Yeah, but I was thinking.
I'm sorry, but we can't have a discussion like this. Maybe later you can discuss further. So.
Can I respond?
Yes, please.
I'd like to respond to the gentleman who just asked the question about the campaign and how we got involved. Was latterly really, just this year actually, but the British trade union movement have been involved for some time over the last few years. We spoke to Abraham Dugas in London and got involved almost immediately because it sort of came into our sphere, if you like. On the question of being in touch with other trade unions, especially the ones you've just mentioned, we could do that if you could leave us some sort of address or communication with other trade unions. Isn't a problem. We'll build the campaign as far as the Durham miners are concerned. We will attempt to build the campaign even further. We've promised this, and that's what we'll do. I hope that answers your question.
Sí, bueno, yo lo más brevemente posible, ¿no? Nosotros venimos de un pequeño país en Europa en el que también tenemos en marcha un proceso de paz. Y aquí, recogiendo algunas de las cosas que se han dicho, hay una obviedad que para nosotros es importante poner encima de la mesa. No existe un proceso de paz si no hay socios que quieren construir la paz. La paz no se construye solo desde una de las partes, sino que necesita también la colaboración de un socio para poderla construir. Bueno.
We come from the Basque Country, a small country where we are trying to build a peace process, a peace strategy, but there is not any peace process if you don't have in the other side people who want to talk, who want to have a peace process.
En segundo lugar, creo que estamos en Bruselas, estamos en la Unión Europea, pero yo creo que todos tenemos que ser muy conscientes, por lo menos esta es una de nuestras obsesiones, que estamos asistiendo a una deriva absolutamente autoritaria de lo que podría ser el proyecto original de esa Europa de los derechos humanos, de las libertades, de la justicia social, etc. Es decir, nosotros que venimos del Estado español, al que ponemos como ejemplo muchas veces de lo que está sucediendo en Turquía o en la inversa, lo que estamos observando es que el nivel de tolerancia con la represión está aumentando no solo en Turquía, no solo en el Estado español, sino en el conjunto de la Unión Europea. No hay más que asomarse a ver los periódicos de estos días para ver la crisis humanitaria que existe con los inmigrantes, etc. No estamos en un contexto favorable a las soluciones acordadas y democráticas, sino estamos en un contexto político que lo que apunta es una deriva autoritaria de las estructuras de los Estados y también de la Unión Europea.
We are here in Brussels, in the European Union, where the authoritarianism is more and more, we can see more and more authoritarianism in this Europe in terms of human rights, in terms of the values of the European Union. We are coming from the Basque Country, and not only in Turkey but also in Spain there are more and more repression, but also in all the European Union. It's not really a very good moment for democracy in Europe, and that's one of the main issues now.
Entonces lo que queda es, por un lado, perseverar, es decir, seguir perseverando, aumentar la solidaridad internacional, la solidaridad entre los pueblos, y nosotros, desde nuestro punto de vista, estamos trabajando con el conjunto de la izquierda europea en una doble dirección, no solo la petición de libertad de Abdullah Öcalan, sino en romper el silencio que Turquía ha impuesto sobre esta cuestión, y creo que este es el camino que tenemos que recorrer.
In that sense, I would like to finish with two keys. The international solidarity is absolutely key now, not only for asking the freedom of Öcalan, but also to break the international and European silence in terms of the relationship and agreement with Turkey and the situation and the repression of the Turkish state against the Kurdish people. In that sense, we are working with all the European left, not only in the European Parliament, but also in all our contacts with our friends all over Europe and the world.
Okay, now I've been told that Mauro Palma is now available, so we'll just take him very quickly. He's the former head of the CPT, and now he's also the ombudsman in Italy for the rights of prisoners and people in detention.
Can you hear it?
We'll just try a few more moments and then we will have to continue and just finalize our... Okay, let me, while he's trying to do the connection, let me say a few more words. We think that the timing is right for this campaign because, as I mentioned, over the 20 years there has been several stages of the campaign at a time when nobody thought actually that there was any possibility for any talks or resolution to the Kurdish question, whether in Turkey or in general in the Middle East. But Kurds and their friends have proved this to be the opposite over the years.
Yes. Can you hear me?
I hear you.
But can you have your camera open?
I think that it's open. Let me check. Okay. Now it's open?
Yes. Now we are...
Do you see me?
Yes. You are welcome to speak.
Okay. Finally, we succeeded. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me at this meeting. I apologize for not being together with you, but I would like to express my opinion about the situation, the ongoing situation in Imrali Island concerning Abdullah Öcalan, because now it's time to put the end of this story. As you probably know, I visited Abdullah Öcalan 3 times over the past 15, 20 years when I was a member of the CPT and when I was president of this CPT. My intention was not to go back there again because my hope was about the solution of the present situation. We cannot accept such a situation for such a long time. In my view, even the CPT should not only ensure that the material conditions of detention in Imrali Island are acceptable from the logistic point of view, but also from under 2 different profiles. First of all, under the profile of the real access to his rights. I was informed that for several weeks or months there was no access to the island, and this is a clear denial of his fundamental rights. And the second aspect is about his wealth, his health problems. We cannot accept to keep a person in an island only together with 5, 6 people for such a long period. When I was president, I accepted the solution of having an F-type prison in Imrali because that was a way to put a stop to the isolation, the permanent isolation of Abdullah Öcalan. But now, about 8, 9 years after the establishment of the new prison in Imrali, even that solution is no longer acceptable. So you can be ensured that I will try in a different position, because now I am working in Italy. I will try to exercise my influence in order to push the European authorities to take on board the solution of Abdullah Öcalan, because I consider that his permanent situation of almost isolation is something that cannot be accepted of our Europe, and cannot be accepted by our, I would say, our belongship to the European Convention on Human Rights. It is a very simple, my statement, but it is important because I consider that a statement given by a person who had the responsibility to have access to him, to see the material conditions, is important because cannot be accused to be an opinion expressed only under a political profile. It is something that is the result of my direct finding visiting the island and checking his material condition. I don't want to interfere with the present CPT, but my appeal is an appeal to Europe in the wide sense, in order not to have in our territory situation of total exclusion of a person of the European context of protection of fundamental rights.
Thank you, Mauro. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, for your prosecution of your works, I wish you all the best. Okay?
Thank you. Have a nice day. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, you've heard the former head of the CPT as well, and just to continue on with all the questions to wrap it up a little bit as well, that of course today we believe the time has come, especially because of the way that the turmoil and the senseless bloodshed that is being deepened is not going to culminate in any solution, neither for the powers in Europe or in the US or elsewhere. The restoration of peace and democracy is only possible through the proposals that have been made by Abdullah Öcalan and the Kurdish freedom movement and the people who are actually implementing it. Therefore, they are the party, not to the tipping of the balances to war, but they are the party who want to tip the balances to the restoration and the enlargement of peace and democracy that will include Kurds and all the other different peoples in the region. So it may look from the outset to be a very hopeless case or scenario, but let us say this, that Turkey as a state is so weak at the moment that the only way it's able to hold its grip on the people and in the area is by senseless violence and senseless occupation and senseless support of monstrous mercenaries, which, they stain the belief of Islam and the people who believe in it. So therefore, we are, of course, during this campaign, we will be campaigning everybody, and as we have been doing over the years. And I have to say, of course, the situation and the visibility of the Kurdish people, of Abdullah Öcalan and his ideas, and of the Kurdish freedom movement is not the same as 10, 15, 5 years ago. It is very much elsewhere. And we are seeing that, fearing this possible surge for democratization and peace, the Turkish state forces are not even tolerating the Saturday mothers, who had met with Erdogan in the past, and they have been brutally attacked as well. So therefore, actually the time is right. Although we've been shown otherwise, this is not the case. We saw this in Ireland, we saw this in South Africa, we saw this everywhere else around the world, that when we think it's not possible, it is actually within our grips. So the Kurds, their movements in Europe and elsewhere around the world, as well as the people here and those who are not here, we will be participating in activities around the clock, declaring every month around a different topic of Öcalan's ideas and rights and freedoms. And so the next event will actually be the 9th of October. Kurds everywhere will be protesting the beginning of what they call the international plot around the world. And this will continue through these different events. But some of the highlights are that there will be an international delegation to Turkey, again, to put pressure on the Turkish state. There will be a huge celebration of Öcalan's 70th birthday. And there will be, at the same time, a huge demonstration of Öcalan's 20th year in prison under inhumane conditions, and his strong outlook for a fair peace for everybody, and an honorable and a dignified peace and democracy for everybody. So therefore, the Kurdish associations around Europe and around the world will also be very active during day in and day out protests, events and organizations. we will make sure that the 70th year of Abdullah Öcalan and 20th year of his imprisonment takes us, if not at the doors of Imrali Island, but to very close, and to get him out, so that we can steer Turkey more into democracy and the Middle East and also the rest of the world. So I want to thank all of you for being here and being present. I want to thank all of our friends here for coming from very far ways, and to make sure that this year and next year is memorable in the name of democracy and for everybody. Thank you very much. I'm finishing.